live with a session, and this is not to save energy, but for some reason, I'm Monique van der Slot and my camera just decided to stop right before this session. Sincere apologies to everybody. So I'll be the voiceover guiding this discussion. And I have two fantastic speakers with us. Let me introduce them first. Hermine Mehta, working for the EBU, and you have the best overview maybe of what is happening across Europe. But also you are one of those people that now combine two fields of expertise, and there's more of them in this panel, because you have a PhD, you are very much, looking into the science and the cooperation. You studied the outsourcing and the IT and what effect this has on the BBC. And at the same time, you've worked at MTV, BBC and Sky as a producer. So you have industry background and you now work on sustainability. Can you briefly explain what you do at the EBU?
Yes, thank you, Monique. So yes, at the EBU, we work for Public Service Media. So they are our members, so the equivalent of BBC, France Television, all across Europe. And we have two main groups that we work on. One is looking at public service media and sustainability, which looks at the high level strategy, etc., organizational level work that's happening as part of sustainability. And then the next group we have is actually on green production. So we make TV programs and TV series, so they are also can be very unsustainable. So we're looking at ways on how our members and share information and knowledge on how those programs can be made in a sustainable way.
And I guess there's definitely one conflict at the heart of the EBU, where it likes international cooperation and co-productions and people traveling all over Europe. And at the same time, from a sustainability point of view, this is not ideal, of course. We'll visit that in a moment. Let's first introduce our other speakers as well. Anne Poluan, you work for the Audiovisual Producers Association in Finland. And again, you as well, you did a BA both in media and in sustainability studies. And you've been quite the, forerunner in Finland, because you were the first one to develop a production guideline called Ecoseti, and you founded the Nordic Eco Media Alliance. Tell me a little bit more about what you do with APFI to start with.
Yes, thank you for having me here. Currently, I'm working in UPFI as a sustainability coordinator, and we are creating basically this nationwide strategy on sustainability, which will include not only ecological sustainability, but also social, cultural, and economical aspects. So first, we are starting with the environmental things, and then hopefully early next year, we're also concentrating on the social parts. But yeah, basically, I am combining the whole industry as one, and we are kind of like the linking point of all the main stakeholders, and we are as a one unit moving the whole industry.
It's a big challenge, isn't it? Because yes, it is a big industry with so many different moving parts, and we'll talk about how that system might need to change in a minute. Let's go to Mathieu Delahousse. You are the president of Sequoia Eco-Tournage. It's a company in France that's very much focused on making productions more sustainable. And you as well, you have ample expertise in the field because you've worked as a location manager for 15 years. So you know what happens on that side of the story. What do you do with Sequoia?
Hello and hi everybody, and thank you for the invitation. Sequoia, as you say, comes from the field. I was location manager for during 20 years, my partner Charles during 10 years, and we realized that we really need to give concrete advice to productions to help them to be more sustainable. And most of the productions have the idea, but they don't know concretely how to do on the field. So we've created Sequoia, which is the first consulting agency specialized in the application of CSR strategies to the audiovisual, film, and advertising industries. And we support productions in the integration of the environmental and social issues, and it's important, in the promotion of their commitments.
Okay, so it's again a big challenge because as we already know, it's not always cheaper to make productions sustainable. It's very often more expensive. So it's very hard to convince all the producers to work with this. We'll talk about the measures that are actually being implemented across Europe to help promote the attitude. Let's first move to Alyssa Obank. You are a project manager at EcoProd, and also again, you have production manager background at Calista Films, Beeldefest, UvA Film Faction. Tell us what you are doing at EcoProd.
Hello, and thank you for the invitation. So EcoProd is a French non-profit organization. We were founded in 2009, so already 12 years ago. And our mission is to engage the film and TV industry in an environmental transition. So we want to better understand the impact of our industry and then offer tools and trainings to film professionals to help them reduce their footprint. And our second mission is to federate all the stakeholders of the sector, institutions, production services, service providers, technicians, to find solutions together and help reduce our environmental footprint. So we have a website where we gather all our informations, all the good practices, and we have published guidelines and a carbon calculator and different tools that you can find for free on our website.
Now, let's start with that, because one of the first things that needs to happen is the calculating the carbon footprint of a production. Because in this session, we'll talk about, especially about the energy side of things. And there already the big question is, who is responsible for the carbon footprints? Does this discussion or this thinking already start at the very beginning of creativity even, or the beginning of the production? Or who is responsible? Who wants to answer that question first? And also how this is changing, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about a change of working methods, a change of attitude, a change of, sustainability. Who wants to go first? Who's responsible for actually calculating the footprint? Oh, yes. Mathieu, you go first, and then Hemini.
Sorry. So, thank you. I wanted to say everybody, and everybody has a role to play in this consideration. And that's why we've created a tool at Sequoia that allows to have a vision before the shooting regarding the budget of the project, of the impact that the project may have at the end. And so like this, everybody can understand which impact they will have by their requirement regarding the scenario, regarding the characters or anything. And so with this kind of tools, you can see before the project who is responsible of which part. And so you can organize the reduction of the carbon footprint.
Those calculators, and there's one, there's several around. I mean, this can discuss which ones, but the calculators, they give an idea, but I mean, they're very difficult it's very difficult to calculate everything, right? I mean, how far does the calculation go? Does it include all the travel of the suppliers, or there's a whole network of suppliers around a film or movie production that probably also should be taken into account? Or is it only calculating what you yourself as a production company are doing?
For the tool we're talking about, our tool, which name is SICO2, it's a very imperfect tool regarding the carbon calculation. The purpose is not to have a perfect calculation, but just to have an idea regarding different sectors, transportation, food, equipment, and everything, and to see which one is has the most impact and which one is the most effective regarding the production of carbon. And after that, you can have a carbon calculation at the end of the project that can be very more precise. But our tool is not to be precise, is to give information regarding the best way to reduce the carbon footprint. So it's very important to use a good one at the good moment, because they don't have the same result.
Yeah. So it's in advance and later on. Hemini, you also wanted to contribute.
Yes, I wanted to echo what Matthew said. It is everybody's responsibility. And also the idea that depending on how far some of our members are, we have those that have been doing carbon calculation for some time. And you'll find that actually the production side actually feeds in very much from what's happening on the organizational side. So if there's a good net zero strategy, it has to be implemented everywhere, so including production. What they've started to do is make it a culture change and start doing sustainability by design. So a lot of our members are starting to do that. So they add sustainability criteria in as part of when they're thinking about a series or a new program or whatever it may be. And then also there are those that will do something rudimentary or as a starting point, something similar to what Matthew has said, where they'll get somebody in to help them just get greener and understand the complexities of
could you maybe also give an example of what are the different parts that you want to have calculated when it comes to production?
So for those that are using carbon calculators, for example, there's a forecast. So before productions even started, in the pre-production phase, various groups of the team will come together and they will do a forecast on their location, on their travel, etc., the cast, where it's going to be, and they'll put all of that data in. And so they get a general overall footprint. And then they decide on what green measures they will take. And as they're going through the production, they will feed that data in, because when there's several people feeding it in, it makes life a lot easier. It's not sitting on the admin is not sitting on the burden of one person.
Yeah.
And then they go through it, and then they always have a real dashboard where they can see where they are on their carbon footprint, what needs to be further reduced. But there's a lot of things happening now. I mean, COVID has accelerated a lot of the sustainability initiatives. So there's new ways, which we will probably talk about later on.
Yeah, and it's COVID has not only showed us that new ways are possible, it's also that actual change is possible and can be implemented if need be. So a lot of the COVID production energy could also be used for how do we make more greener production. And could you add, because from Finland, I would assume a lot of smaller production companies there, for which the organization of such a calculating guidelines is quite complicated. And at the same time, I know that your association has made sure that not only Finnish productions will start to calculate their carbon footprint, but also all international productions that take place in Finland. So this is quite a big thing. But they just have to calculate it right now. Is that true?
Well, it's not obligated yet. It is something that we promote strongly, that this is important for us, and please do this. Yes, the industry here is very much more smaller than in many countries. My background is in TV for 10 years. So there's like this common joke of like, if we have a 10 episode series in Denmark, for instance, we do the whole 10 episodes with the budget they had for one episode. So yeah, that also means that because we don't have that many resources, it's automatically also more sustainable. But it doesn't mean that we are perfect. Of course, we have to do many things here as well.
You made a guideline for producers that they could use to become more sustainable. Of all the areas productions can look at, what is the most important one? What is the area where you can have the most effect if you change your way of working?
Logistics.
So that's actually driving back and forth where things go.
Yes, and of course, the whole industry, I think, worldwide is becoming more international. Like co-productions are a thing that will be more common, and especially for us, we're in Finland, so we're quite far from everywhere. We need to travel if we want to do a co-production. Most likely fly somewhere. So the logistics is a big thing, in addition to energy and waste.
Yeah, logistics, energy, waste. Those are the three areas. Okay, I'm moving to Alyssa, because in France there are already some additional rules, I think, right? I mean, you have an active audiovisual organization saying, okay, by 2023, everybody needs to actually calculate and offset their carbon footprint. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. Well, so Ecopron was founded in 2009, and what we have seen in those 12 years is that we could have a small impact on some people who were already committed to changing their behaviors in a private way. So they would also change it in their professional way. But now we see that we're going to the next step, and that it's really more about systemic change. And so the legislation is about to change in France. So this summer, the CNC, which is the National Film Board, made announcements, and they will make the carbon calculation mandatory by 2023 for all productions. So the goal is really to, I think it's what Mathieu said, it's about for everyone to better understand the impact of their own project, and then also, of course, to gather data and to better have a better understanding of the priorities. And what we also see in France is that some public and also private funding institutions are working on the idea of making their funding only available to productions who comply with environmental standards. So I think that will be the next step in France, to make it mandatory for film productions to have a green strategy and to work more sustainably. I'm not sure what the criteria will be and how far we will go with those, but that's the thing a lot of institutions are working on in France. So this means that in a few years, if you want to produce in France, if you want to access funding, you will need to work more sustainably. And that will, of course, lead to a more systemic change.
Yeah, that will go across the sector and not just for those that are interested and have the money and the energy and the sympathy to do this, because now it's a selection of groups. Nevertheless, to have those companies that already are doing this and that are really at the forefront. I mean, it's interesting that all of you describe, you know, the problem of traveling, co-productions, the whole mobility issue. And of course, at the same time, and this is partly stimulated at least by the whole COVID period, the virtual production sets in Europe are rising everywhere as well. You know, the big LED screens, which consume energy as well, but big LED screens, instead of traveling somewhere and having just a cameraman go out there and get the background. Is this something that you see happening in the different regions at the moment? Because we are, in a way, going into a new kind of production where all the elements of a production are digitized and can be combined later on instead of in one moment, right?
Yeah.
Who has, yeah, oh, everybody, very good, yeah. Very good. Okay, Mathieu, you go first.
Yeah, just I wanted to talk about what you've just said, and this is linked. We were talking about the impact of the logistic, location management and everything, but I think the first thing is the set. Where do you want to shoot and why do you want to shoot there? And the LED solution is one solution, but I have the example of shooting on which I was working, and they planned to go on the mountains because the story took place in the mountain, but really there was like 2 scenes where you really saw the mountains, and all the shooting was inside in a house, in an apartment. So do you really have to go to shoot it in the mountain? And so to move all the team and everything where it's difficult to be sustainable because there is a lot of specificities there, or can you shoot it in the valley nearby the train station and everything, and just goes up to shoot the, so there is not just LED, there is also the fact that you can rethink from the beginning what you really have to do and where do you really need to put the effort and all that, because the logistic and everything is just a consequence of your first location. So it's not exactly the answer you were expecting.
So maybe we're entering a golden age of in-house drama. You know, everything is inside because it's so much easier. Studio. And do the others see, you know, technological solutions that, you know, just different ways of producing, not producing the things we do now better, but really differently? Alyssa, please.
I think maybe on the LED walls, what we have seen in the last years is that there was more and more digitalization of our film industry, especially in the post-production. And at first we were happy about it because we thought it would be more sustainable to be more digital, but we see now that that's not the case, because the digital also has a big impact and it's growing. And so the LED walls can be a very good solutions and can be very more sustainable than shooting on location. For example, if you have to go from France to South Africa with a big team and build a set there, and of course then it might be more sustainable to have to shoot in France in a studio with the LED wall. But in other cases, it will be less sustainable to work with LED walls. And I feel like we don't have enough information today to know exactly when it's more sustainable to work on location and when it's more sustainable to work on the LED lights, because we also don't know how long those walls will last, how quick the innovation will be. We'll see that with LED lights for the camera department. There's so much change and so rapid change that the lights don't even last long enough to be more sustainable.
Yeah. I can see that. And yes, Hermine.
So actually, that's one of the things that we are working on. So some broadcasters are starting or have used LED walls, etc., virtual sets for certain programs. We've also noticed that actually now there's for some of the smaller members where the cost of these things just gets too high. There's actually a lot of organizations that have popped up all over Europe where you can hire them. And we've just started a group within the EBU to actually look at the sustainability of those LED walls. So we understand that there's this reduce amount of energy from not traveling or having everybody travel to a special location. But exactly how sustainable are those LED screens and walls? So that's something that we just started to look at. And that's one thing that we'll be focusing on the next few months. Aside from that, then there's a lot of ideas of thinking outside of the box, as Matthew mentioned. A lot of organizations have started doing co-productions, but they're looking at it in a different way. So because they started it in COVID, there's a lot of things that they can still continue after COVID. So for example, if you're doing a co-production where several organizations from around different countries are involved, what they do is actually the others just fund the one co-production company and they do it in their location at their home. They look after everything, and all the others, all they're doing is just investing within it and letting the one production company take control of it. And because they were doing it in COVID, everything was kept to a domestic level. And that's something that a lot of broadcasters are starting to look at now as well, to see if there's ways that we can continue to do that and not just go back to traveling all over the place.
Now, if maybe we should, because the title of this panel is energy efficiency. So maybe we should actually bring it back to what is possible. How can you reduce energy consumption on sets? During the production, what can you do apart from deciding not to travel all over the world and that side of things? Once you have said, what is it you can do? Is it because it also comes down to what kind of energy you use, I guess. I mean, that's one thing, right? Who wants to go first? Mathieu, and then Anne, maybe, because you wrote a guideline as well for the Finnish people. Mathieu, what do you think is the best solution? What should we do?
First of all, what we do with productions and with the team is to see what they've planned to do and why they plan it. And most of the time, we see that they didn't really think about it; they just do it because they are used to do it like this. And so, first of all, is one more time to rethink: do you really need to do it, or can we find another solution? And are you ready to implement a new solution? And for most of things, they are ready. For example, telling to a grip guy, not grip guy, sorry, gaffer guy, that he has to use LED, it can be very difficult for him because it touches the artistic part. But explaining to him that there is new solution now for the generators and he can find new solution less polluting, it won't affect his skills as a gaffer guy, but it will allow him to to do better things. And first of all, is to see what they are ready to do on which part. So it can be.
And what, because this is definitely an area that I'm not a specialist in at all, but I read that the diesel generators are still needed and it's very hard to come up with alternatives, or can we very easily move away from that part of the energy consumption on a set? Because if I think of sets, that's what I think of, use generators and lots of people using lots of light, energy, everything. But is there something we can do up to this on an industry level with the diesel generators?
There is many things we can do. And first of all, to be very efficient about how much energy do you need. When you use a generator, for example, if you use a big generator for low consumption, the generator will produce 80% of the energy he can produce. So if you just use a little part of it, you will pollute for nothing. So just this, explaining to the people that they have to calculate, to measure what they need to be sure to have the right consumption, can allow the shooting to decrease from maybe 50% their consumption, just because they're not planning to be safe in case of. So this is something. And then after that, you can provide new solutions. Today, you can plug on the grid and find new energy. You can have new kind of generators. Maybe they produce more sound, but if you're inside, or if you have solution, the sound won't be a problem. So you have many solutions. You have to find the good one for your shooting if you're somewhere. So that's why.
Okay, let's find the others. If they also find that their producers and the productions actually do find these solutions, that do find ways to use the energy grid, or who has examples of this? Because I think everybody that's listening would love to hear some great examples to make use of.
I can comment shortly. Of course, the whole sustainability thing and sustainable productions, it's very in the early steps here. I know there are some actions, but one example that just came to my mind is, I'm not 100% sure what's the situation at the moment, but I think it was in London where our industry worked together with the city so that they have more areas in the city where you can actually plug in, because that was like a really problem with the shootings, because there weren't those options available, so they had to use generators. So like from this, I would say also that because I'm feeling like the industry here is very eager and they're like very passionate and they want to like run forward instead of taking one step at a time. I'm always reminding them that, remember, our industry is also just our industry. Like if there's a problem to solve in Finland on a bigger level, our industry as alone cannot fix it. Yeah. So also like we have to combine the cities or the government to work with us. So yeah, that the problem with the generators, that might be one solution.
So that also hints at something bigger, that this is not something you could solve purely inside of the audiovisual industry. You actually have to actively engage with cities and governments and other industries, maybe. Yes. Hermine, you're nodding here as well. Oh, Alyssa, yes.
Sorry, maybe just an example from Paris, because I think it's the same thing in Paris than you were saying. So in Paris, the city has will ban diesel cars and trucks by 2024, I think. So the film industry is working on solutions on how to go into the city and have other like electrical trucks or other solutions, and also the same thing with the generators, working with the city to make it easier to access the grid. So there's a lot of we can see that the city is already implementing things, and then the film industry is following and finding the solutions. And I think the solutions are there. This is just a matter of a little bit of time and a little bit of money to find them.
Yeah, but it's interesting. So I start now to think of a city, especially those cities where so many productions are being made, full of places where you just lift up, a little lid in the floor, and there you can plug in all your. Does it work like this? I mean, how do they make the grid accessible to the productions? Is that just that they're points of access across the city?
Yeah, in Paris, it's for example, you have a lot of places where you have markets, and so every place that has a market has an access to the grid. And so the idea is to make those plugs available to film shootings.
Interesting.
Which is already possible, but quite complicated and takes a lot of time, and often for film productions, well, you need to have the answer quickly. So that's what they're working on.
So the city needs to be faster as well in that respect. Yeah. Who has other examples? I mean, electricity grids in cities available so you can skip the diesel generators. What else is there that you can do at the moment that makes complete sense and doesn't harm the production and just makes it more sustainable?
I have a funny example. This is absolutely not a city shooting, but it's a mountain shooting. And when you have to shoot high in the mountain, you cannot bring everything that you need because it's very difficult to go at 3,000 meters high. And 8 years ago, when I was shooting for Belle et Sébastien, took place in the mountain, we were thinking to very low consumption equipment because we were not able to bring at the top of the mountain solutions for a bigger power source. So it was not the ecology, the sustainability that first brings us to do this change, but it was a technical problem. And that's very interesting because we realized that because of this technical problem, we reduced all our consumption. We are looking for solutions, and that's why that's what Alisa was telling. When you have an obligation, you need to find a solution. And finally, cities are the worst place, in fact, because everything is easy. You think you can do easily a lot of things. When you start to be in somewhere harder, you start to think differently and say, okay, if I find a solution, it will be more easy. I won't need an helicopter to take a power group to bring it at the top of the mountain. So everything is in the mind. It's okay, it's logical. I won't have a power group, so I won't have the helicopter. So it's I'm saving money. Everybody's happy. So if you change the point of view, you can see that you will find the solution, and everybody will be very happy to find the solution because you need the solution. So we just need the cities to say, okay, guys, you need the solution.
But I can also imagine that if you actually raise the bar on a level of a country where, you know, the audiovisual authority says, you know, you just have to do it, period, then suddenly it becomes more interesting for the equipment makers to start making lighter equipment. And so there's a cascade of, you know, parties in the whole system that can then think, okay, this is serious. We might as well now, you know, do more innovation in this field.
Yeah, maybe just to add another thing, I think it's also a financial thing, because we often think that sustainable production is to save the world, but actually it's also to prepare our industry for the future. And the future is that there's a real pressure on resources, and we can already see it. I mean, energy prices are going up in Europe. It's crazy, and it has an impact on our production budgets, and it will be worse in the future. So I think sustainable production and energy efficient productions are also a way of sustaining our film industry and trying to and learning to produce with less energy and less resources and have a lesser impact.
Yeah, so
and
it
also
becomes cheaper. Yeah, go ahead, Anne.
I have one more thing. I have not worked in the times when films were used. I've always worked in a digital area, but I've talked about this with many people, and in some ways, I think we are also, I don't know how to say it, but the more we plan ahead, the less energy we also use. Because, for example, I've traveled around Finland. We were shooting in total maybe 14 days, and the material that was used was maybe 5 seconds per episode in 10 episodes. And that was just something that they hadn't decided beforehand, that, okay, will we need the material or not? So also, like, there are so many shootings where, well, we'll just take this just to be sure. So, like, please be more sure beforehand before you start shooting, because that is also someone takes the time in the post-production to have the material out and then putting it somewhere, it's kept somewhere. That all takes energy.
There's actually something happening at the same time at some parts of film production. I mean, I can see it at commercials production, for instance, where they pre-render everything in game engine so they can pre-produce everything digitally, and then they decide, okay, this is what we're actually going to do on set, and that saves a lot of money, time, and organization especially as well. So there are other developments in the industry that actually stimulate being more efficient, that are not just about spending less energy, but organizing the process differently. Emily, because we have about 7 minutes left, and there's one topic that I think it would be nice to touch on briefly, and I know this has already been discussed in the session before this session, but if you look at this specific topic of energy efficiency, first you want to at least calculate to be aware of all the energy that goes into a production, and then you want to sort of limit the production, the energy you spend, and you want to also maybe ask all the suppliers and everybody in that whole system to cooperate with this. And even if you can convince everybody to do it, it's not easy. But where does the change start? Is this something that needs to come from higher up, or is this something about sharing practices? I mean, I think you all play a really important role in this field, from different areas of the whole system. So I would love to know where you think what the next few steps should be. Let's start with Alyssa.
I think the next step, at least in France, and I guess also in other countries, is on the one hand, for the legislation to change and for the rules of film fundings to change, to really implement a systemic change, and then have institutions and organizations like EcoProd or eco-managers like Sequoia is doing to accompany those changes, because it doesn't help if you only change the regulation. You also have to accompany the industry to help them find solutions, and so that they don't have to also carry all the financial weight of this transition.
Yeah, and as we know, change is possible. I mean, if I look at Paris with all the bicycles these days, change is possible in really short time as well. Mathieu, what do you think?
I just want to do a small parallel to the COVID, and we've realized that in 6 months, we've changed a lot of things regarding the COVID. Government has given money to help the productions. Providers, technical providers have created specific equipment to help the productions, and productions had understood that has to engage special people, COVID manager. If we do exactly the same thing with the sustainability, we can, in 6 months, find solutions.
In 6 months, well, very optimistic, very good, very good. Anne, what do you think?
I'm agreeing with both of you, what you just said, but what is the best way to make a change, depending if it's company or individual? I think it's something that it varies what rocks your boat. Like, because I first dealt this subject like 10 years ago, and then there was nothing happening in Finland then. So now it's really strange that everyone is really interested in this. And I think I've seen quite many views on this, like there are production companies that are genuinely interested in this. And then there are also those who will be interested once something is obligated from them. Yeah. So it depends. And also, I think this is a really tough issue, because this is something very personal, like, because every time you talk about sustainability, there is always the situation that the person is starting to think about, okay, how about me, and how about my life? It also, it's so combined, your work and your personal life. So it's not an easy issue to start demanding, because it might be really hard for people to understand.
Yeah, although there's more awareness now than there has ever been. And there are more people like you guys who have both media and sustainability expertise. It's also about domain expertise. You can think, oh, let's make it more sustainable, and not know where to start. But we now have the expertise, that's for sure. Emily, you have the European overview, and in different countries, different trajectories are now being developed. On one hand, some countries there's, let's do it and we make a rule and you don't get money if you don't become sustainable. And in other countries is we develop tools and we're going to help everybody and we put some extra money in. We don't take away, but we give. What is your overview? Can you give me a quick overview in 3 minutes where you think this will
Like,
go?
how can we save the world in 3 minutes? So I completely agree with everything that's been said. It's everybody's responsibility. First of all, there's the part Anne was talking about where it's a personal thing. There's also the idea that if things are forced upon us, we will make it happen, just like COVID has happened. Things changed really quickly and dramatically. And now it's a matter of just keeping those things whilst we get into some form of a normal, whatever this new normal is going to be, that we just make sure that we take those things with us and continue them. And then lastly, I still think that when you look at it overall, change needs to come from everywhere and each different level needs to support each other. So at a legislation level, so the government legal regulations, at an industry level, and then at an organizational level. And I think once it starts happening in all of those, then that's when things will kind of synergize and start happening together. And sustainability isn't a new topic that's kind of gone through this. I think it's the same if you think about it in terms of finance, for example, where things are difficult. If you want to find money, you'll find the money from somewhere. And it's just the same with sustainability. If you want to make it sustainable, you'll make it sustainable. But we just need support from all levels to move forward, I think.
Emily, President.
Well, I'm super happy that we have 4 optimists here that really feel that things can be done. And thank you so much for your contribution. Also, I know all 4 of you are very happy to share information. So anybody who's listening or watching this, look them up, and because they have wide resources on their websites, all 4 of them. And again, apologize to everybody for my camera problems. See you again in 15 minutes for another session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.